Welcome to SupplyPike Academy, Walmart Allowance Deductions. I'll be your host, Colby Bollinger. I lead the account management team here at SupplyPike. Along with me will be Krista. Krista, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, thanks, Colby. Hi, everyone. My name's Krista Nicewarner. I am the VP of Customer Success here at SupplyPike. So I'm happy to have you all on our Allowance Deductions webinar today and looking forward to showing you what features we have available to help you determine validity on those deductions.
Awesome. Thanks, Krista. All right, for today's agenda, we're going to do some introductions, which we've already done, and walk through everything we're going to talk about today, which is Walmart Allowance Deductions. So we'll just review in the app different fines, codes, those type of things that are going to impact you, as well as your supplier agreement, what you need to do, how you need to upload it to potentially win back some dollars that are invalid. And then finally, we'll have questions, discussion if needed. Please feel free to use the Q&A to ask any questions during this webinar, and feel free to chime in on the chat as well. But any questions, please use the Q&A at the bottom bar there. So we will have a copy of this deck. It usually takes us about 3 to 4 days to record and upload. So if you want to review it after the call, we will have that available for you. Going back to reiterating that the Q&A is the best way to ask any questions. And yeah, we can get this started.
All right, great. Thanks, Colby. So I will mention there on the bottom bar of your Zoom, if you want to just go ahead and pull up that Q&A box. That way you're not searching for it as we go throughout the presentation today. That way you have it handy. If any questions do come up, feel free to add those as we've said. So let's go ahead and dive into Walmart allowance deductions. We're going to start by just talking about how you can use your supplier agreement to determine validity and fight deductions within SupplyPike. So we've added a lot of features recently in the last several months that help you look at those deductions and determine if they are valid or invalid. We're going to walk through how to download your supplier agreement from Walmart's Retail Link application, and then take that agreement and upload it into SupplyPike. We'll also look at how to add your specific allowances into SupplyPike to help us make those validity judgments. And then we'll look at setting up auto disputing. We have added an auto disputing feature for allowance deductions. So we'll look at setting up that feature and utilizing auto disputing for SupplyPike your allowance deductions that are invalid. But let's start off by just understanding a bit more about your supplier agreement. So your supplier agreement is a legal document that details your agreement with Walmart and basically what you need to adhere to for Walmart's supplier standards. So supplier agreements really apply to anyone that is supplying product to Walmart for resale, and any agents used by suppliers. So your supplier agreement is going to include your general supplier information. You'll have things in there like terms of shipping, terms of payment, returned merchandise, and then of course your agreed upon discounts and allowances. As I'm sure you all know, supplier agreements can be pretty long documents. Typically the agreed upon discounts or allowances are toward the end of that document. So you'll want to kind of scroll to the end of it, and we'll take a look specifically at what that page typically looks like and how you can, just determine what your agreed upon discounts or allowances are. So before you can add your supplier agreement into SupplyPike and begin seeing, the validity judgments in SupplyPike, you'll need to download your supplier agreement from Retail Link. So to do this, you'll log into your Retail Link account. And you'll click on My Agreement. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to the next slide here. You'll notice here at the bottom, we've got a quick screenshot here. In your Retail Link account, you're going to click on that user profile section that's in the very top right-hand corner. And then you should see an option for My Agreements. And that's where you'll want to go to download these documents. So once you click on My Agreements, you're going to be taken to a different screen where you'll see a button alongside your agreements that say Sign an Agreement, which is kind of a weird wording for this. I know it seems scary to click Sign an Agreement, but you're actually not signing anything when you click that button. Once you click the Sign an Agreement button, you'll be given the options to view, edit, or download the supplier agreement for each business unit that you want to add into SupplyPike. Some suppliers, though, are going to see a little bit different version of this page. You'll see something that says switch to the latest version before you see the Sign an Agreement button. So if you see that dialog, simply go ahead and click on it, click on switch to the latest version, and that will get you to the point where you need to, or you can download your supplier agreement from there. So I just want to point out that, many suppliers have multiple supplier agreements. You may just have one, you may just have a couple, there may be multiple of them, just kind of depending on what your business looks like and how that was set up. So we would certainly suggest that you download all of your supplier agreements. And as we get into kind of the next section, we will show you how to upload those, and you will be uploading all of your supplier agreements. That way we can be comprehensive and ensure that any allowance deductions that are coming through are matched to the correct supplier agreement. So after you download these documents from Retail Link, you're going to return to SupplyPike to actually upload the agreement. So we're going to go through the step-by-step process on how to add your supplier agreement into SupplyPike. And we'll also talk about the steps to enter each one of those individual allowance percentages in the supplier agreement section. But before we do that, let's talk really quickly through what deduction codes a supplier agreement in SupplyPike is actually going to help you with. So if you're a current customer of SupplyPike, I'm sure you know that shortage codes are really the bread and butter of what our users dispute in SupplyPike, and that's really not going to change with this feature. However, this is really opening up your ability to dispute any invalid allowance deductions so that you can be a bit more comprehensive in fighting all of those invalid deductions that are hitting your bottom line. The value in this feature is really that it helps you identify any allowance deductions that you see coming through, and if they are invalid, and then you can take action on disputing the ones that are incorrect or maybe excessive. So you're probably going to have fewer invalid allowance deductions because this is something that Walmart actually automates in their system. So there's a lot less human error involved in allowance deductions. In contrast to shortage deductions, where we see a lot of human error causing those shortage deductions. However, when these are invalid, we want to help you make sure you have visibility into that and have the ability to dispute them. We're also going to talk through a few of these allowance deductions and looking at how you can actually prevent any valid, so how you can prevent any valid allowance deductions in the future as well. So here on the slide to the left, you'll see a list of applicable codes So these are the allowance codes that entering your supplier agreement into SupplyPike can help you dispute. Again, you can also visit SupplyPike's Help Center to really dive into each one of these codes and look at best practices for disputing them. What supporting documentation you will need to dispute each one of these codes. We know we're going to need the supplier agreement, which is what we're helping to automate for you here. But many of these will also need like the invoice or potentially the PO or the claim. So all of that documentation is available in our Help Center, which we will talk about in more detail a little bit later on as well. And I do have a link here. As Colby mentioned, you will receive a copy of the slide deck within like 3 to 4 business days after the end of our presentation today. So we do have a link here that will take you directly to our Help Center and our deduction code knowledge base. So I highly recommend that you guys take a look at this, and we're going to dive in a little deeper into this knowledge base later on so that you can see, what type of things it can help you with. So along with individual disputing of these allowance codes, we'll see how you can individually look at them and determine if they're valid or invalid, and how you can individually dispute them. We have also added the ability to auto dispute these codes that you see listed on the screen. So we're going to take a look at how to set up auto disputing and how to include your allowance deductions in those auto disputing settings. As many of you know, we also have auto disputing for shortage codes, which again is kind of the bread and butter of what SupplyPike helps you with disputing. But we have auto disputing for all of those shortage codes, pricing codes, as well as the allowance codes that we're talking about today. So on that note, let's go ahead and look at the SupplyPike application. We're going to take a deeper dive into SupplyPike's allowance disputing features and just kind of go through the application live and help you set this up. All right, so first we're going to look at how to add your supplier agreement. So we mentioned earlier, you can download it from Retail Link, really easy to do by going into your My Profile section, clicking on My Agreement, and just make sure you download all of your supplier agreements from there. So once you've got those downloaded, it's time to go ahead and upload them to SupplyPike. So in SupplyPike, you are going to navigate to the settings icon in the top right-hand corner. So you should see that listed next to your company name. You'll just click on settings. And from here, we've got a few different settings. We're going to talk about auto disputing, so we'll come back to this one. But we also have options to auto archive, auto hide things, and then supplier agreements, which is what we're looking at today. So in the supplier agreements area, this is really where you're going to go to upload that. And we do have instructions for you, so you don't have to remember these step-by-step instructions that I'm giving you. Hopefully it will be good for you to kind of see how this is done visually. And then if you need to refer back to our step-by-step guide, you can just click on this How to Upload Agreements link. And it's going to walk you through the same steps that I'm going through with you today to upload your supplier agreement. All right, so the first thing that you're going to do is click on Add Agreement over here on the right-hand side of your screen. And then you're basically going to choose the file from your screen. As I mentioned earlier, supplier agreements are very long documents. You're going to want to scroll towards the end of that supplier agreement to locate your allowance section. And I'm going to drag this over. So this is an example of the page that you're going to be looking for in your supplier agreement. And this will tell us what we need to enter into SupplyPike. So I'm going to position this just over to the left here so we can kind of see both things at the same time. So after you click on add agreement, you're going to upload that document and it's going to bring you to a screen that looks like this. So this is where we're going to kind of compare our agreement appendix and the allowances that are listed, and we're going to enter those here into SupplyPike. It is very important to set up these parameters exactly as they are stated on your agreement, because this is what affects SupplyPike's validity judgment and basically ensuring that that is accurate. I saw a question come through just to clarify, do you upload your entire supplier agreement to SupplyPike or just the allowance section? And I would recommend going ahead and uploading your entire supplier agreement to SupplyPike. That way you have easy access to it. You can download it from SupplyPike in the future if you need it. But when you're disputing these, it's a good practice to go ahead and include the entire supplier agreement, and including this page, of course, but just go ahead and upload everything. All right, so the first parameter that we need to define here is the department number. So our system, SupplyPike, is going to populate only the department numbers that we've received a deduction for in the last 2 years. But you can choose other, and you're going to get, kind of that full list of departments there. So just go ahead and select your department. So the sequence is the next thing you'll want to enter. This is the last digit on your 9-digit vendor ID. So you would want to go ahead and enter that sequence. And then your effective date of your supplier agreement is also going to be important. So as I'm sure you all know, supplier agreements don't change all that frequently. So really, they're going to last you several years before you have to edit these again in the future. But the effective date of the supplier agreement is really important so that SupplyPike knows when this specific agreement started, so that we can map those relevant deductions to that agreement based on the effective date. Right below this, you have the allowance types, and you'll see this is a drop-down menu. So this is going to show us all of the possible allowance types that are available for you to select here. So these are the different deduction codes that you might receive. And on your supplier agreement, as we see here on the left, you should see, all of those same codes and the allowances that are listed. So we've got SA. We would select SA at the top here for new store allowance, NW for new warehouse allowance, and then WAQD. Now on the warehouse and distribution allowance, the WAQD, this is typically listed as one item on your supplier agreement. But when you enter it into SupplyPike, you'll want to break them up and add them each individually here. So as you see in my example, I've kind of mirrored the allowances on the supplier agreement on the left. I have mirrored that into SupplyPike here in this chart. You can add additional allowances and it'll let you select here. If you accidentally enter one incorrectly, you can use this minus button to the right-hand side to delete it. But the most important thing here is to remember that you need to add all allowances that are stated on your supplier agreement, because this is really what we're looking at to help determine validity judgments or relevant allowance claims. So if it is entered incorrectly, you may see some incorrect validity judgments into SupplyPike. We also have a notice here at the bottom just kind of explaining that WAQD. If it is showing combined on your supplier agreement, remember to separate that out into 2 different line items as we've got here. So once you enter everything and mirror your supplier agreement allowances here in SupplyPike, you'll want to make sure you save. So I'm going to go ahead and click save now. And I'll just pull this over off my screen so we can go back to our agenda. So after you've got that in here, again, in some cases, you'll need to add multiple. So if you have multiple supplier agreements, go ahead and add another one, upload it, and then kind of follow those same steps to upload that and enter all of those. So once you have added all of your supplier agreements in here, they're going to be saved for you. You can easily download them if you need to. You'll notice this ellipsis button over here to the right-hand side. You can download the PDF copy of your supplier agreement. If you click on edit, that's just going to take you back to that screen where you can make some adjustments here if you need to. Or if it needs to be deleted and maybe an updated one with a new effective date added, you can delete those as well. So once you've entered these, we're going to be mapping these to any deductions that you might have received and also doing a validity analysis based on the agreed upon allowances that you have entered here. So now that we've got the supplier agreement entered, let's go ahead and look at an example of an allowance deduction that has a supplier agreement attached to it and how that validity judgment is made. So to look at that example, I'm going to go into the deductions tab. This is our deductions list view. If you're a current SupplyPike customer, you know this is really where you're working on a day-to-day basis in the SupplyPike app. There are 4 buckets of your deductions here at the top of the screen. We've got the actionable bucket, which is the deductions that have not been acted upon yet. So in this bucket, generally, you're going to see deductions that are not disputed or that are in a status of supplier action, which means that you need to supply some additional action or comment to send back to Walmart. So you'll see those here in the actionable bucket. The in progress bucket is going to show you all of your deductions that Walmart is currently researching. So you've submitted those deductions, you've sent them off to Walmart, and they're in Walmart's hands to either approve, deny, or ask for more information on. And then you've got your archived bucket, which is everything that you've worked. So this is going to show you everything that has been approved by Walmart, anything that's been denied. It's also going to show you anything that you've marked that you're not going to dispute, or anything that just is canceled. So basically, when I describe the archive bucket, I like to say that it's everything that is in some sort of final status, which could be many different statuses, but it's kind of in a final state. And then the last bucket, which is where we're going to pull up our example here, is our all deductions bucket. So this is just combining everything. You're going to see a full list of all of your historical deductions in this bucket. So I'm going to pull up a specific claim number that is an example for us to look at today. All right, here we've got a code 54, which is a warehouse allowance code, and this is a deduction for $10.80 on, and you'll see the claim number and PO number here. We can see that it's not disputed, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up by clicking this arrow on the right. So as you all know, SupplyPike pulls in a lot of information about these deductions. We have all of your claim details here. So you can see the claim date. If there's a claim in the APIS, which is Retail Inc. Accounts Payable Information System, you can see the amount of the claim, all of the claim lines. we scroll down, we can see all of that order information as well as the check lines and check information. We can also see any history on this deduction. So if it's something that you've disputed in the past, or you just kind of want to check out, any history on this, that'll be down here in the bottom left. And then the right-hand side is where we're going to take action on this deduction. This is the area that we're going to use to dispute it. And the method that we're looking right now is to individually dispute this deduction, which you can individually dispute every deduction that shows in SupplyPike. But we're also going to look how to bulk dispute and auto dispute these deductions as well. So you'll notice here that we've got a supplier agreement attached to this specific code 54. So that is attached because we have entered it into the supplier agreements section, and code 54 is one that it is mapping to. You can view your supplier agreement from here. You can also download it from here if you'd like to do that. But the most important thing to know here is that if the supplier agreement box is checked, then this will be included when you dispute the deduction. So another thing I want to point out here is you'll notice here in the claim details section, SupplyPike is using your supplier agreement details that you've entered to determine if this is a valid deduction or potentially an invalid deduction. And there's some different things that we look at to determine that. And of course, we're going to look at your supplier agreement and what you have entered for that. But we're also going to look at the invoice, and we're going to check the invoice to see if you actually already gave that allowance on your invoice. And when we talk about this a little bit more, this is really one of the areas that you can look into if you're seeing a lot of valid allowance deductions. We would recommend you look into how to prevent those. It may be that you are not providing your allowances off invoice as you should be, which is why you're getting deductions for them, because that allowance is not on your invoice. However, there are cases, and we see this all the time, where suppliers are putting the proper allowances on the invoice and taking those off invoice, but they're also getting a deduction for that same thing. So when we talk about this validity judgment, that's really what we're looking at is, did you properly take the allowance off invoice as you should have? And if you did, this deduction is likely invalid because, it's double deducting. So we want to dispute it. Now, in this case, and just in the example that I have here, this deduction is showing valid. So what that means is that the allowance percentage given on the invoice does not match the percentage according to the supplier agreement. So either you have not given that allowance on the invoice, or the percentage is different than what is in your agreement, and you need to make some adjustments to your invoice in order to prevent these in the future. However, if this was, invalid, then we would want to dispute it. We would want to include a copy of the invoice. We would want to include a copy of the supplier agreement, and we can just simply submit that dispute here. It would be, advisable to go ahead and put a dispute reason in here as well, saying something like, I've already taken this allowance off invoice. Please see attached invoice and supplier agreement for confirmation, and please repay. So this is how you would individually dispute those. Let's talk a little bit more, though, about the validity judgments on these allowance deductions. So I'm going to go back to our list view here, and I'm going to clear out that filter. And you'll notice the filters at the top here. I'm going to narrow the claim codes down to just look at code 54s. So these are the warehouse allowance deductions that I've received. And you can see I've received about 22 allowance deductions for $243. So not a whole lot there, but enough for me to go ahead and start looking into this. In the dispute readiness filter, at the top, you'll see a validity judgment. So this is a filter where we can take this list of code 54s and filter it down to see only allowance deductions that are invalid or likely invalid. Now, I'm using a demo account today, so I don't have any of that live kind of data in here. But if you have any invalid or likely invalid allowance codes, they would then be filtered out in your list here. And those are really the ones you're going to want to look at disputing. I'm going to go ahead and just select everything back here so that we can see all of our code 54s. So now that we've looked at individually disputing these, let's go ahead and talk about auto disputing. So back in the settings menu, I'm going to go back up here to the right-hand corner and click on the settings cog. You'll remember earlier I mentioned that SupplyPike has auto disputing for shortage codes, pricing codes, and allowance codes. So this is the auto disputing setting. The first thing that you'll want to do is enable auto disputing. So if this is not something that you're currently utilizing in SupplyPike, you do have to enable it first. If you are currently using auto disputing for shortage codes and pricing codes, you just need to add the allowance codes to that. What you'll do is you'll come to this drop-down menu right here in the center, and you're going to navigate down to the allowance codes. When we click on allowance codes, it's going to bring up that entire list of allowance codes that SupplyPike has available for you to auto dispute. So you'll see all of them there. Since we've been looking at code 54s, let's just kind of use that in our example as well. So let's say I wanted to go ahead and turn on auto disputing for code 54s. We would just toggle this radio button to on. So if it's blue, that means it's on. And then over here on the right-hand side, we can select which criteria we want to auto dispute for. So in this case, for allowances, we're only going to allow auto disputing for ones that are marked as invalid. So that's really the only option here. So when you're talking about allowance codes, really the only thing you need to do is turn on this setting for the allowances that you want to auto dispute. And if the validity judgment is coming back as invalid, then SupplyPike will automatically dispute those for you, along with the supplier agreement and the invoice. Every day at 10 a.m. Central Time is typically when our auto disputing runs. So about that time, you'll see all of those that are ready to go just automatically be submitted for you to Walmart. There is one other setting that I want to point out on this auto disputing. You do have a claim amount dollar threshold. So some of SupplyPike's customers will want to, define a threshold here. So let's say that you want to auto dispute everything under $10,000. But anything that's over $10,000, you want to be given the chance to manually review that before it gets disputed. So that's really what this threshold is for. You can put a maximum in here. So like $10,000 in my example. And then that way, anything that's at 10,000 or over 10,000, it's not going to auto dispute for you, which gives you the opportunity to manually review that and submit the dispute individually. I do want to stress that, once you enable and you turn on your auto disputing for the codes that you want to turn it on for, make sure you scroll all the way to the bottom and click on Save Changes. If you don't click that Save Changes button, your auto disputing is not going to start. So just make sure you scroll to the bottom and click on Save Changes there. All right, so we've been looking a lot at Code 54 today. So I want to pull that one up for you all and just talk through a little bit on allowance deductions and how to prevent them. So to do that, I want to show you a feature, or I guess kind of a plus that we have in the SupplyPike application, which is our live chat and help center knowledge base. You'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner here, you'll see the live chat tool. If you click on that button, it's going to open this dialog for you where you can see a few different things. First off, you can chat with our customer success team. So, one of the things that we really value at SupplyPike is we want to make sure that you get answers to any questions that you have as quickly as possible and that you're not stuck trying to find something in the application, or, maybe you get some kind of weird response from Walmart asking you for something and you have no idea what they're talking about. Send us a message, ask us. And we talk with a lot of suppliers every day. We have a lot of subject matter experts here at SupplyPike, and we will scour our SupplyPike team here, to find an answer for you. So you can send us a message here at any time that goes directly to our customer success and support team. And they're very quick at getting back to you and researching your question. But really what I want to focus on today is our help center, which the second part of this is our help center and knowledge base. So you can search for any keywords within our knowledge base to find step-by-step instructions or help on specific codes. So I want to look at code 54 today, which is the warehouse allowance deduction. You'll notice I typed in 54, and the very first article that appears is code 54 for warehouse allowance. So I'm just going to click on that. And this brings up a article that's going to give you a lot of detailed information about code 54. And we have these articles on a lot of codes, so not just code 54, pretty much any code you're looking for will have a detailed article on. So these articles are going to give you a description of what that code is for. So, a volume allowance is given on certain shipments coming through the warehouse. A code 54 occurs when this allowance is listed on the supplier agreement, but it's not included on the invoice. And then we're going to give you some suggestions on how to prevent code 54s. So we talked about this a little bit already, but code 54s are only going to be triggered when there is an allowance listed on your purchase order, but it's not listed on your invoice. So because those are only triggered in that scenario, you need to review your allowance before shipping your PO and make sure it gets included on your invoice, right? So, some things you can do to prevent these are really talk with your EDI provider. Make sure that you have all of the proper allowances included off invoice. So if those are not being included on your invoice, you're going to get deductions for them. But you can make that change, right? You can start adding those to your invoice. And that way you don't see the deductions coming through, and it keeps your data looking cleaner. However, these can be disputed through APDP, and you'll see just kind of a common scenario here in this document. And what that means is that your supplier agreement states that an allowance is supposed to be given off invoice, but your EDI provider might be giving it off line item. So that's another specific tweak there. Maybe you are including this allowance on your invoice, but you're including it at the line item level instead of the invoice level. And so Walmart's automated system is not recognizing that the allowance is there. So making a tweak to that EDI invoice and putting it at the invoice level is also a way to prevent, especially, they would be invalid in that case. So this would prevent you from having to dispute those and just, prevent you from receiving them in the first place. You'll also want to check that the correct dollar amount is being withheld from the invoice. Sometimes the correct dollar amount is being withheld. It's just being taken off the wrong place, like we described earlier. So, a lot of little tweaks here and tips of things for you to look through in these articles. And a lot of these will also have suggestions for how you can dispute and what documents or supporting documents you need to include in your dispute for that. So again, just to reiterate, you can access that by clicking on the chat icon in the bottom right corner, and then searching for a code, or you'll see listed here Walmart deduction codes, and that is just our full knowledge base that contains all of the codes. So if you wanted to take a look at the code 55, the new location allowance, you can pull that up here. And again, see the same type of thing. Description, how to prevent, can it be disputed? And if you're going to dispute it, how do you dispute it? All right. We've got some time for Q&A, so go ahead and pull up that Q&A box there. If you have any questions or if you want me to review anything that I have covered so far, please go ahead and type that into the Q&A box. And I'll give you just a few minutes to type in any of those questions, and then we'll go through a couple of other contact information and resources if you think of any questions in the future. All right, no questions so far. So for those of you that don't have any questions, just a couple quick tips on contacting us or resources. Of course, you can see Colby and my email address listed here, or you can utilize our chat message that I showed you a bit earlier to send us a message. That'll come directly to us as well, and we can chat there. We also have an excellent support team, so if you ever have any support needs, feel free to email them at support@supplypike.com. I do want to point out just a couple of additional resources for you. Supplier Wiki is a great resource. I'm sure you're somewhat familiar with that since you joined today's webinar, but we have lots of webinars for Walmart, Target, Kroger, and Amazon suppliers available in Supplier Wiki, including on-demand webinars. So if you missed a webinar that you weren't able to attend, we have got all of those here and on our YouTube page, which if you just search for and subscribe to SupplyPike's YouTube page, all of our past webinars are posted there as well. So feel free to join our mailing list with Supplier Wiki for all of that educational content. And then for future SupplyPike Academy webinars, keep an eye on our monthly customer newsletter. We'll always send those out with the next month's live training webinars and SupplyPike Academy webinars that are planned in the future. All right, Colby and I will stay on here in case anyone has any questions for about another 5 minutes. But if you don't have any questions, thank you so much for attending today, and we will see you next time.